Hi everyone, welcome back to Somerset House and our digital series, Upgrade Yourself Peer Exchange. I'm Scott, one of the creative producers at Somerset House, where I lead on the Creative Careers and Skills programme. Today's event is being streamed live on Twitch, Somerset House website, YouTube Live, Facebook Live and Twitter. If you'd like to ask any questions and for a chance that may get read out during the next hour, please comment on one of our platforms using the hashtag Somerset House. Our Creative Careers programme supports emerging new talent and offers access routes into the creative industries, which we deliver as 3 strands. The first strand is the Creative Careers Academy, which offers full-time work placements fairly paid at London living wage within the creative sector and on-site at Somerset House. The second strand is the Creative Job Studio, mentoring and networking events in partnership with charity, Creative Society. And the third strand, Upgrade Yourself, skills enhancing workshops and talks both digitally and delivered eventually in real life. Today, Tolúlọpẹ Ògúnrẹ from organisation Coders of Colour will be sharing her experiences, some practical tips and advice from around her practice and the coding and tech industry. So for now, sit back, grab a pen and paper, as we've got lots to cover. Get comfortable, as I'm delighted to hand over to Tolúlọpẹ. Hello.
Hello.
You can hear me okay? Yeah. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Are you well?
I am well, thank you very much. I hope you're well.
I'm very good, I'm very good. So this session, we will see your presentation that you've put together for us, which is looking fantastic. And then I'll still be in the room, I'll be on mute. So if you want me at any time, I'm a good novice to tech and coding. So take it away.
Wonderful. Wonderful, I will take it away.
Thank you.
There we go. Is my screen visible? Yeah.
Yes, it's visible. Maybe turn up the volume a touch.
Turn up the volume. Can you hear me now? Better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, hello everyone. My name is Tolúlọpẹ Ògúnrẹ and I am the founder of an organization called Coders of Colour. So, try to go to the next slide. Hello, this is me. I'll give a brief introduction of myself. So like I said, my name is Tolúlọpẹ Ògúnrẹ. I am the founder of this organization. I am very interested in computer science. I have a degree in mathematics and computer science. And I've always liked technology from when I was very, very young. I'm a self-taught coder. So I started to teach myself to code when I was 13. And I started with HTML and CSS, some of which we'll actually be doing today, which is really fun. And I'm super passionate about technology in general, but also diversity in technology as my journey towards my degree and beyond has really been shaped, unfortunately, by the color of my skin and my gender kind of together, giving me certain experiences that not everybody would have. And so that's why I started Coders of Colour. What is Coders of Colour? It's an organization aimed at supporting and upskilling the next generation of underrepresented people of color in tech. And we do that through workshops, we do it through programs. Why did I start it? I started it because I was just going through this whole process of learning to code and learning computer science by myself, feeling very lost. And I would have really appreciated a space where I could have some mentorship and some guidance on projects and different things that I wanted to do just as a young person as I went. So that's kind of what it is. We have a bunch of different programs. So we had a summer program last year where we had 10 young people not knowing very much coding and building mobile apps at the end of 2 weeks. And we've just finished a Wagtail and DevOps course where we had 15 young people, again, little to no programming experience. They learned Python, they learned Django, they learned Wagtail, and they built a production-ready website for charity. So we have 10 charities with completely new websites made by someone who didn't know how to code at the beginning of the month. And people seem to love our programs, which is great. It's wonderful. Here are a few kind of tweet selections of what people have said. They've really loved it. They've really overcome. And the whole essence of what we do is to give people those skills and have them apply it and have them feel confidence in their ability, because if they have an entire project that they can look at, then, you know, that's amazing. So what else? Who have we worked with? So we've worked with a wide range of companies. We've worked with a couple big ones, Microsoft, Facebook. We've also worked with Tate Britain. We actually housed our summer programs in 2018 and 19 at the Tate. And we've also worked with JP Morgan. That being said, we do work with other community organizations that have the same aim as us, which is to increase diversity in the tech industry. And that's the likes of YSYS, Coding Black Females, and an array of other organizations. So what is tech? Should I get on to talking about tech?
Sorry, yes, please do, yeah.
Okay, so what is tech? I'm just going to give a kind of introduction of the tech industry, all the different parts to it, and then coding, and then we'll go into an exercise. So what is tech? So the technology sector is a category of stocks relating to the research, development, and or distribution of technologically based goods and services. Basically, tech is everywhere, and there are some companies that create tech products, and there are others that leverage tech in what they do. So there's definitely tech in the public sector, there's tech in the NHS, there's tech in government, but there are also companies that create entire kind of products that are technological. It doesn't always have to involve coding. So there are so many different roles that I will kind of go through that exist in the industry already. So there's UX design, UI design, and product management. These are not necessarily coding heavy. So UX is short for user experience, and that's about how a user feels when they're navigating an application. So the example is always, how many clicks does it take, for example, on Instagram, how many clicks does it take for you to make a new story? And how can we improve that experience, or what's the best way to facilitate that experience? And that's what it looks at. And it incorporates things such as psychology, and so many different kind of fields that you wouldn't even imagine. But it's not coding heavy, and it's still a completely viable kind of job in tech. So that's something you can definitely go into. There's also UI design, and UI stands for user interface. And that's more about the placement of things. So we were talking about how many clicks it takes to go to an Instagram story. UI would be, okay, where should we put that story button, and why? And how is that going to facilitate? So thinking really about how is the user going to feel? That's more experience, but how easy is it for the user to do things, and what's the best placement? Obviously, this is to increase revenue and so on and so forth. There's also product management, where, from what I understand, it's someone that's kind of an intermediary at times, talking to the client and the developers. It's great if they have an understanding of the development process, but if they don't, it's still great and wonderful. And it's about making sure that everybody's happy on either side, and making sure the developers have tasks that they can achieve, but also that the clients have the correct expectations and those expectations are met. So that's a kind of brief overview of different jobs that you can have in tech that don't require coding. So if you thought I have to learn to code, if it terrifies you that much, you actually don't have to, if you want to work in tech. That being said, though, I personally believe that everybody can code, and everybody has it in them to code. It's just about being in the right place with the right support at the right time. And that's what we kind of do with Coders of Colour, ensure that young people have the right support, because they may not get that at school or at other groups. There are some roles that do incorporate coding, though. So there's the software engineer role, which we probably all know, but even if we don't, that's developing software, and yeah, ensuring that you develop it as efficiently as possible and that it can run as well as possible. But to back that up, we do have software testers to ensure that what the software engineer thinks should happen actually happens in 99 out of 100 cases. And we have data scientists. That's just an example of a role that we can have in tech, where it's someone that builds machine learning models to perhaps influence decisions in a company, and influence maybe where budgets are allocated, or again, you could layer things on top of each other and say, you could do that within UI and say what experience or what has generated the most revenue with the placement of a button, and let's use the data that we have to influence decisions that are made. So that's like a brief overview of different roles. I'm definitely open to answering any questions, but what I'm really excited to talk about is coding. So what is coding? It's also known as programming, and it's the process of creating a set of instructions that tell a computer how to perform a task. So it can be done using a variety of computer programming languages, such as JavaScript, Python, and C++. And so with coding is basically giving the computer a set of instructions on how to do things. But there are so many different types of computers and so many different types of applications that there's a wide array of programming languages. So we can have HTML and CSS for the content and styling of websites. We can have JavaScript to make things move on websites, but we're now using JavaScript for mobile apps sometimes. We also have Swift that's used to make Apple mobile apps, and we have Java that's used to make Android mobile apps, but Java is also used in banking, and it's also used in web development. And so there are so many different languages and so many different uses. And so sometimes it can be quite scary, and it can be quite frustrating to know where to start or how to start. I would say if anyone is looking to get started, they should probably think about what they'd like to make and kind of work backwards that way. I think for every language, there are definitely tutorials that are accessible, and us as an organization can always come to help and lead people on the right path. Like I said, we did a program with Python. Some people may not start with that, but we started people off with that, and that worked absolutely fine. And so I think I believe in you, basically. If you want to start, I believe in you, and I believe you can do anything you want, and achieve anything you want. But just some examples, like I said, so we have HTML, CSS, JavaScript is also used in websites. Then we have Java for apps, mobile apps, banking, so on and so forth. Python is kind of the hot one right now because it's very multifaceted. So it can be used for automation, for example, having your emails answered for you. It can be used for meta programming, so like writing a program that writes programs. It can be used for the obvious ones, machine learning, data science. Everyone's using Python for that these days. And so there are languages like Java, Python, that have multiple uses and might be ways to start. But there are also languages that are quite specific, like Swift for mobile apps. I think Flutter is another one made by Google for mobile apps. And so it really depends on what you want to make, which languages you need. And it's not like the English language where you can write a letter or write a story with the same kind of tools. You do need completely separate languages to do that. But it's not scary. It's not the worst thing in the world. There's, loads of support, loads of free tutorials online, and I'm sure everyone will do great. So let me just check.
Tolúlọpẹ, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can I jump in? What is your favourite programme that you would go to? Like your first, if you had a project come in, is there something one of the tools that you would reach to straight away, just naturally? Like, because you're really, what would that be?
That would be Python. I'm a big Python fan, arguably a Python stan. I love Python. I just think out of all the languages, it's object-oriented, so that's kind of a way of working that is used, and it's a principle that's kind of core to programming. That's good to know, but it's also very easy to get started with. So something like a Java, which I've actually done quite well. I did it a lot at university. It takes a long time to get started, and you can have an idea in your head, and it may take 20 or so minutes to just get started and have space to start coding out your idea. Whereas with Python, it will take you 10 minutes to go from idea to some semblance of code. So it's really, really easy to get started. And the syntax is nice as well.
Syntax. As someone that hasn't coded before, personally, like when I think of coding, I think of like the Matrix with the black screen and the green numbers coming. Is it kind of that? Sort of?
That's no, it's not. So there are loads of different languages, loads of different uses, and we're going to see HTML and a little bit of CSS today, and they do not look anything like that at all.
Okay.
But I mean, matrices with numbers going down, you don't really see very often. What it usually looks like is text, and you have a bunch of text, but a lot of the words have meaning, and there are signs, so like equal signs, minus signs, there are brackets, and they're all very specific to a language, and they all mean a certain thing. So you have to put them together in a specific order in order to ensure that the computer understands what you're trying to do.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, kind of. I think
Kind
so.
of?
I know Photoshop and Illustrator, and that's kind of like a sense of layering, creating layers. So I sort of, maybe I would approach it from that point of view, I guess, of creating layers. Would that make sense? Or
Unfortunately not. It's more procedural. So it's more kind of a set of instructions. It's more like a recipe.
oh, that's good. Okay.
Or steps to follow.
Yeah.
With the computer. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Ooh. So, like I said, I've been super quick, but I'm kind of excited to get onto coding and get onto doing something. So everyone that's watching can actually follow along with me right now, and all you need is a web browser. I'm going to be using Google Chrome, so you can do that along with me in order to just feel comfortable. But I think I need to reshare my screen. Yeah, hold on a second. I'm just going to share my screen again. This one to here. There we go.
So this is considering like the web structure and sort of how to build structures.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So what we're going to do is we're going to use a language, we're going to manipulate a language called HTML, which is used to make the content of websites. So if we think of a website, what we can see on here is a lot of text. We can see some images. We have this really cool effect going on as well. But we have text, we have images, they're all positioned in a certain way. They will have certain colors and fonts and styles. And so we're going to look at two languages used for websites. So HTML is the content. So the text that's rendered is used via HTML. And CSS is the styling. So the fact that this read, watch, listen is gray is CSS. And HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. But HTML and CSS is how everyone refers to them anyway. And what we're going to do is we're going to just play around with it without needing any equipment. So usually when you code, you use an integrated development environment, which is an IDE. And it's a software that you use to kind of make software. So it's where all your code lives. It's where you can do those really cool things with that. And I have a glossary that I think I'll be sharing later on with all these different terms inside. So when we look at this website, we have all of this stuff is really cool. This is normally how you kind of go. I'll just, okay, I think I need to resize this a little bit to get the cookie thing. Yeah, just make it a little bit smaller. There we go. So I'm just going to take off the cookie notice. And now we have the whole website. We can see all of this text. But what we're going to do is we're going to change some of the text, be mischievous and change some of the text. I'm going to give a warning right now. You're not changing the actual Somerset House website. You're not accessing their server or anything. When the page loads, when you request the page, it kind of loads locally onto your laptop. So you're just changing what exists on your laptop. And in reality, you're only changing what exists in the session. So as soon as you refresh this page, everything's going to go away. But enough of the preamble. Let's go. Let's get started. So I can see some text here. This is a lot of stuff to manipulate. And the way that HTML works is through tags. And so a tag is kind of two sets of angled brackets that dictate what type of content is in between them. So if you have like a P tag, which stands for paragraph, then the text inside will be known as a paragraph. You can have H1 tags, H2 tags, which are for headings and things like that. And that will say that there's a heading in between. So what we can do with any website is we can right click, click inspect, and wait for this cool panel to kind of show. I'm just going to take that bit off. move the faces to this side, and now we can see the code for the website. And we're kind of hackers, not really. And so here is the text, and here are the angled brackets that I was talking about. You can also put extra information within the angled brackets to dictate stuff, but here we can see, for example, a no script tag, which indicates that whatever's in between this is no script. There are a lot of div tags here, which are for dividers, but here's an H1 tag, for example, for what I was talking about. So now that you have this inspector open, if you right click anything and you click inspect, it should highlight on the right hand side the area of code that whatever you right clicked is from. And here we can see Somerset House Studios. And what's cool about inspector is that you can actually change this around. And I can say, for example, Coders of Color Studios. There you go. And now look, the text has changed. And so if you're just starting, or if you're like, oh, this HTML stuff, I'm not sure about it, I'm not sure if I'm going to make a decision, this is a good way to play around with things. And even as you kind of continue to learn, you can look at a fully fledged, this is a whole organization's website. How do huge professional websites look? And you can see that there's a lot of this orange stuff all around, which you probably won't have when you get started. But what I'm interested in now is the text over here. So if I, for example, inspect this, I should see a P tag. So like I was saying, this is a P tag, and it denotes paragraph. And so there will be text in between, and it's called a paragraph. So if I click on the button here to expand, we can see Somerset House Studios is an experimental workplace, and we can just click on this and we can change it to something. I'm not really sure what I'm going to change it to though. Scott, do you have any suggestions of what I can change?
Maybe some song lyrics? Or
song lyrics? Oh, you're going to have to dictate the song lyrics to me then.
Oh gosh, can't look at my iPod. I do have a question actually. So if you worked on a website, the coders are very much the people before the marketing team who would be creating these pages. Is that kind of correct? So the coding on the right hand side on the screen, you wouldn't necessarily do that if you were working like a communications team or a marketing team, but instead it's the people that are behind the scenes as the coders. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So there are people that are called software engineers that do that. Yeah. You can also have things like the front end and the back end. So a front end developer is someone that works very much with HTML, CSS, and sometimes some JavaScript. And then there's a back end. So this is the stuff that we can see. But there's also a lot of logic going on behind, and that would be kind of known as the back end. But if someone does communications, they probably won't need to touch.
They don't need to do this area. And in terms of sort of looking at the language here, like the words and stuff, because when I look at this, it's so foreign to me, like the sort of the div and the class and the content. Did you learn this at your university, or is it something that doing this kind of exercise, being exposed to these kind of processes, you just pick up as you go along?
So when I started to teach myself to code, this is what I started with. This is the language that I started with. Yeah. I didn't start with a huge website, but I did go to a session a couple of years later that again initiated people into just looking at what is HTML via inspecting websites and seeing what's going on behind the scenes, and seeing if you feel comfortable. Like I said, don't be too scared. Things take time, and this is a fully professional website. But even if you just can play around and look at how I've changed the text here, that's always a good start. So no, I didn't learn it at university. I think some universities do cover this, but I learned more of the object-oriented. So I did a lot of Java, and then later on I did a little bit of Python as well.
Okay, because I was looking at an article last night online doing some research about object-oriented programming, and it was the title of the article was How to Explain Object-Oriented Programming to a 6-year-old. Because it's just, but even reading it, I still couldn't really fully understand, because it's really different for me. Like I'm not super coder or techie. So object-oriented programming, could you tell us more about what that is, just in sort of...
Absolutely. I don't want to give you a second headache. So I will try and skim over as much as possible, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually just did a workshop on that yesterday, actually. Object-oriented programming is a paradigm that refers to objects and classes. And so this is a disclaimer that for people that do code already, this is a difficult concept. So if you don't have any coding experience, if everything that I'm saying goes over your head, that's not a big deal. That's fine.
Yeah.
And so object-oriented programming is where you have classes and objects, and you can share data and store data as well as methods within classes, and then instantiate them as objects. So the examples that I give and that I was working with yesterday is, for example, a human being. So you can have something called a class, that's a human being, and within that class, you can have different variables that denote attributes of a person, such as their age, their height, their name. So those are different things. And every person, so I have an age, height, and name. Scott, you have an age, height, and name.
Yeah.
But we look different. We look slightly different. We are two completely different people. But when you strip everything back, that's what we are. We also can eat, sleep, go to work, different things like that. So those will be methods. So actions that someone can do. And again, you and I can both eat, sleep, and go to work, but we're two completely different people. And we may do that in slightly different ways. So the class is kind of the blueprint and saying, okay, here we have a person. And then the object would be Tolúlọpẹ, or the object will be Scott.
Oh, I see.
Whoever is here. And so that is an instance of a class. So it's like taking from the blueprint and actually adding information to that blueprint. So there's always a space for a person to have a name. But if I make Scott, if I instantiate Scott, then I can give him the name Scott, I can give him his height, and I can give him his age. And then that's like an entity that still has all the capacity. So you have the capacity to eat, sleep, and do things like that. And there are also other principles that I will not tell you by name to stop confusion, but I will talk about. So for example, we are two different people. We have different attributes, which is done, and we have different ways of doing things. But the way that I go to work may not be the same way that you go to work, but there's a general kind of travel from X to Y. So when I create Scott, Scott may go to work differently from how the general person goes to work. And that's one aspect of object-oriented programming. There's also the fact that I don't want to create Scott and then be able to kind of change his age. So as soon as I create Scott, Scott is only responsible for himself. And so if I change the code, if I change Tolúlọpẹ's code, then I shouldn't be able to, but as a side effect, change the code that's to do with Scott. I hope you're still following.
Yeah, so in terms of computer game design and building characters, is this similar? How you would design a character's clothes, for example, when you pick the sort of avatar and pick the hair color and stuff, or is that kind of going too granular?
I would say possibly, but I haven't had much experience in computer game design, to be perfectly honest with you.
Because it's a whole different area, which is I don't realize that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But the object-oriented programming is a principle. So being able to create people, being able to create different things, like for example, if we think of a Spotify and we really just bring it down to explain the concept, you can have a song, and a song has a title, a song has a running time, but not every song is the same. So once you instantiate one song, you give it those attributes and it can do certain things. And then you can have loads of different songs, and you know that they can all, for example, play, and they can all pause, and they can all stop. But then within that, you can have things like albums or genres, and you can also have kind of hierarchies of things. And to explain hierarchies, I usually use the animal kingdom example. So you can have an animal, and an animal can be a bird or a mammal, but it can also, a bird can be, I don't know, an eagle or a pigeon. And a mammal could be a lion or a hamster.
Yeah.
And they're all animals, so there'll be certain methods. They can all eat, they can all sleep, they all probably have a name. But as you kind of go down in the tree, you can specify certain attributes of different types of animals until you get to a specific animal. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does actually. I'm taking lots of notes as you're speaking so I can unpick. We have a question that's come in from the audience. What has been the biggest challenge you have faced in your career in terms of your colour, and how did you overcome it? If you're willing to answer that, that's a really good question if you're happy to answer.
What has been the biggest challenge that I have faced? I would say it's more to do with experiences. So without going into much detail, I consider myself a very kind of hardworking person and someone that perseveres. If I'm still here after everything I've been through, I'm definitely looking at the end goal of things. And so what's been hardest for me in terms of the color of my skin is me being treated differently from other people, or me having certain comments made towards me to do with my color. And how did I overcome it? It's hard. I mean, at first you second guess as to whether or not what is happening is really happening. And then when you kind of come to terms with that, it's always great to have a support system. And it's something that I haven't really had until recently, but definitely having people to talk to, having people to uplift you, having people that are always in your corner is how I've overcome a lot of what I faced. So thank you for your question.
That's a brilliant question. And also, so within your sort of personal views, that obviously feeds into your business principles as well. So the way you treat your business and your relationships you work with, it's the same sort of ideas, like have a support system, have the people around you.
Absolutely. Most of my support system does come through the business stuff actually. And when you do this work and you meet other people, like I put on the slide earlier, that are interested in this work as well, then you've got that support and you've got that kind of basis. But definitely, I mean, a lot of why I do what I do is because I don't want anyone to go through what I've been through in the last 8 to 9 or so years. And I just want people to be themselves and to feel comfortable and to feel safe in the spaces that they enter.
That leads on to another question about collaboration. Shall we stop sharing the screen? Is there more of this you want? Because there's loads of questions coming in, so I'm just doing. Good to see you. Here she is. So there's more questions coming in, so we can start asking. So collaboration, in terms of working with people like JP Morgan or the Tate Britain, how do these relationships form? Do they come to you, or do you propose ideas, or is it a two-way kind of?
It's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. I think I'll give. I have to shout them out, but Afrotech Fest is a Black tech festival in London. And it was amazing to just be around people that look like me, but people that are working, and we were all supporting each other. And they left a space for people to just go on stage and talk for 2 minutes about their side hustle or what they do, and if they need help for that. So that was a situation, and that's how I got connected to some people. There are other ones where there are structured things. So at the end of 2018, we had a career fair. And so with that, we kind of went out to different contacts that we had and said, this is what we're doing. Are you interested? Come along. And from that, you do get introductions to other people at other companies. Twitter is always amazing too. And publicizing your work and sharing your work with other people will always have people interested in helping out.
With the career fair in 2018, did you organise that actual event, or was it something that you bolted onto? Did you plan the venue and all those kind of things?
Yes. So I planned the venue. We worked with a sponsor for the venue. They said that they were happy to give us their kind of venue, and they had a stall, and then we just had different businesses come in and organise their kind of swag and things that they were giving to people.
Cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess that kind of doing things autonomously gives you more control and more kind of power of what you want the message to be. So you're not just tagging along to someone else's agenda, but you're actually setting it. It's more.
Definitely. I think in the line of work that I do and in what I'm trying to do, I have to be very careful with that. And I have to ensure that the message that I want to send out is uplifting my community and not necessarily a company.
Yeah, that's cool. And in terms of the collective, so Coders of Colour is a collective. Do people, is it kind of like could you share a little bit about the structure of the collective? So is there a few partners, that kind of vibe, if you can?
Sure. I feel like the collective is a very like Somerset Housey word.
Oh yeah, did I make that up? Did I just?
No, I think probably it's the same kind of meaning.
Yeah.
But how do we work? We work with partners, anyone that wants to partner with us, whether that's other organizations that want to bring coding into what they do, or it's corporates that really care about diversity in tech. And we kind of do events and visibility things. Like we've had a series of just talking to people that work in tech. And when I was 13, I didn't see a 27-year-old Black woman working in tech. And so there are so many different things, so many different wheels that are turning as to what we do, but we just do it via working with different partners.
That's cool. And then you do have a space at Somerset House Exchange, like you have office space there, so you can have your meetings in that space. But you work remotely as well, I assume. Before COVID, even you were sort of.
Yes, pre-COVID, we were definitely remote, and obviously physical for events and things like that. But it's amazing to have that space in the exchange and to have all these different people. I mean, we made so many connections and possible partnerships from just being in the exchange and being able to walk up to someone and say hi. So it's been really good.
That's how we met before COVID.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. As another question, as the tech world changes every day, and sometimes it feels like it changes every hour, what are your kind of main go-to websites and where you get sort of updated news and things? And there's a couple like Mashable or The Verge. I don't know if they're good or if there's other ones that you recommend people could.
Yeah. When it comes to tech news, sure. I probably get a lot via Twitter, and I think it's more because I'm kind of I follow developers and things like that, and it's more about languages and the evolution as opposed to this new technology does X, Y, and Z. Mashable, The Verge, there's also TechCrunch, but I think that's more startup-y as well. But I mean, do you even need tech news? I mean, there's a lot of tech news ends up in mainstream anyway. So yeah, but I think those are some good suggestions.
Cool. Another question coming in. Would you say that the market for freelance work is still fertile or becoming oversaturated? And then is it realistic to be able to live off this eventually, so it's not just a side hustle?
Also, live off this eventually. Is that freelancing?
Yeah, so I think, so would you say that the market for freelance work is still fertile or becoming oversaturated? So that's one part. And then is it realistic to be able to live off this eventually, so it's not just a side hustle? It's quite a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So many ways I can go in my answer with this. If you're talking about freelancing as in tech freelancing, no, it's not. No, not oversaturated. We just created 15 freelancers last month. And always remember that you have your inner circle and you have your friends and you have your families and they can be clients. And I think they'd much rather invest in someone that they love than get work from outside. So you've always got your family as possible clients. And so no, it's not saturated. Is it possible to live off freelancing? Absolutely. I know people that are freelancers, that are contractors, that either go into businesses and help them out or just have people kind of coming to them. We actually had a conversation. He's been freelance for the last 10 or so years, and he still is now, despite COVID, he's doing fine. So definitely, if that's what you want to do, go for it.
And I guess when you do freelance jobs, not to burn any bridges, because you might come back to that project. Is that kind of?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Although I would also say it's important to set expectations and to protect yourself, because you don't want people to be taking advantage of you. There are loads of stories of other people being taken advantage of by tech freelancers, but I would definitely say draw out some sort of agreement and some sort of payment system to ensure that you're not putting hours and hours of work into something that you're not going to get a return for.
And you can find those online, like a template, like sort of an agreement memorandum, or kind of just have clear goalposts yourself.
Yeah, definitely. There are loads of templates online, but also think about yourself, how you work. That will dictate a lot of things as well. And it all takes practice. It all takes practice. When we had, I'm like stealing all of this from the conversation that we had actually, but when we had that conversation, he was saying there are freelancer networks and there are people that you can talk to. So once you enter those networks, you'll have support regarding
Yeah.
all of that.
Is there any kind of, without going into like extreme detail, but is there any kind of projects that you sort of learned the hard way from that maybe didn't pay you the full amount of money, or they went into administration, and how did you bounce back from that? Do you have any examples of that? Or have you had quite a nice journey as a freelancer so far?
I am particularly triggered by this question. Again, it was just about the support system, and it was just about having people around you to kind of pick you up when you're down. I have had an experience like that, and I would just say it's good to get everything fully in writing. So there's writing and there's writing,
Yes.
and confirming everything beforehand. How to navigate that. Make sure you know what your rights are. Make sure you know how to do things. But if you're thinking of starting, it's the perfect time to look all of that up. And it's better to delay your start a little bit and ensure that you've covered all your bases, and legally you're doing everything, you know, the right way, and legally you know that you're entitled to X amount, or so on and so forth, than starting, jumping the gun, and having your first client, you know, not be very happy and disappoint you.
That's brilliant advice. I guess the research phase is really important then. It's really key. In terms of when you sort of graduated from uni and you were starting out, because there'll be people watching this that have just graduated this summer and they think, oh gosh, I don't really know how to do an invoice, or how to do, you know, there's a certain language that you learn as you go along, and sort of the business skills. Did you feel equipped when you left your studies, or did you again learn on the job and learn from experience that way?
I am a learn on the job person. I think I'll tell you a story, a little story about my character. So the reason why I've started all of this stuff is because, for example, when I wanted to do my work experience when I was 14, 15, I didn't know anyone. My parents didn't know anyone. My parents' friends didn't know anyone in tech. So I spent a good 4 months every day after school churning out emails again and again. I must have sent at least 500 emails to all these different companies with, you know, no one kind of getting back to me. I've mastered emails by then. So it was more, I want to get work experience and now I need to send emails. So how do I send an email? What's the best way to do it? Whether that's asking around about, you know, how best to formulate something, but I kind of work backwards. So I know what my goal is and then I will learn the skills. Is that the best way to do things? I'm not quite sure, but I'm here now talking to you, so can't be too bad.
That's a good strategy. I like, because when you mentioned earlier about finding the programs that would suit you, you said figure out what you want to make and then work backwards. And I think that's a really strategic but realistic way of learning and doing. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that one myself. On the website, on your main Coders of Colour website, it says that the impact report had over 200 young people trained through different events.
Yeah.
So you've engaged with a lot of young people. Do they stay in touch with you guys, or obviously some would, but what's their story? Are they studying? Are they in careers? Do you hear back from them? Do you sort of?
Yeah, we do. So we do keep in touch. I actually need to update that number. We do keep in touch with the young people. And one thing that I didn't actually mention is we're here as a point of contact, a great place to start. So if you're like, I want to code, I don't know where to start, we have loads of introductory events, but
Yeah.
we're also very big on pushing people down that pipeline and kind of helping them as they go along. One prime example of that is we had someone come to our summer program in 2019 and he said, oh wow, this is really interesting. He was very inquisitive and I think he likes to play games. So all of the wow, this is how you make games kind of got him really excited. And afterwards we got him some work experience and he actually did some work experience at the end of the year. And so it's, you know, continuing to work with the young people like him until they get to university, because he told us he wants to study computer science now, and we've had people that say they want to study computer science. So it's about helping people along that pipeline, but not enforcing that on them, because I just believe that everybody has the right to learn to code, and to also say no. Everyone should have enough experience to say, I've tried this and actually I don't like it. That's all I kind of want to do. But if people love it and they really want to go, then we help them along that line.
That's really inspiring to hear, I guess, because people, unless they know someone that's worked in an industry, or if they know behind the scenes, people might not even think that that is a job role. Like to game design, that there's people probably that I had a meeting once with someone that was a game designer who was actually, he was in touch with painting the textiles, so painting the fabrics and the velvet and the clothes that the warriors wore in this computer game. And I was like, really, that's a job? That's one person's job to look after texture. And that was fascinating. So it's really good that as a mentor, you instill that confidence, you open those doors and that confidence. What, as a mentor, because we have picked up on this before, how does it feel having that responsibility of people coming to you for support? Is it overwhelming? Does it make you feel kind of, how do you feel about that?
I'm one of those. I know someone that's better for that, actually. And I leverage the network. I would say definitely a mentor. I'm really big on education, and I'll say I'm more of a kind of educator than a mentor.
Yeah.
But we did at the end of our summer program last year, there are a couple of people that a friend of mine, see what I mean, said, oh, I'd love to mentor them. And they have monthly meetings and they talk and things like that. It's great that people want to learn to start, and it's great that people you know, come to me for help. Like I'm definitely honored, and I think I'm building something that's in place to help those that maybe don't have the confidence to reach out to a human being. But no, I don't. It doesn't overwhelm me yet. But this is not the call for everyone that's watching to ask for mentorship either.
Yeah, 3,000 names come into your email inbox. More questions coming in, so we'll just steer it a little bit more. So do you think as technology and computers keep advancing, there'll still be a place for printed matter, like newspapers and magazines? Do you think that's slightly different? And I know it's not your area, but is technology taking over? Do you think we'll still go to buy things in a shop, or do you think everything will be moving online? That's slightly different from coding, I know, but what's your opinion of that?
I think things like printed newspapers, for accessibility reasons, I don't think anything can become absolutely obsolete. There are some people who probably prefer to read or find it easier to read, have the need to read on paper. I think the percentages of things will change, and it's the market and its consumers, is us, that dictate what percent of media we consume is online and on paper. If we all decided today to just stop reading Mashable online and start reading, I don't know, the Telegraph or something, things will change. So regarding that, I think for accessibility reasons, there'll always be a proportion for that. As for shopping, I mean, we saw that Amazon shop thing that they had, that idea that they had for the shop. I don't think it really worked. Again, it honestly is up to us. It's not that tech is coming for us. I think hopefully through this, I've shown that we are tech. We need to code something for it to work. And so it's the decisions that we make as to what we decide to code, what we decide not to code.
Yeah.
And how we react as consumers to things that will dictate all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see us, having stuff delivered, especially things like fruit and vegetables. I like to pick those myself. And so I'm still going to go into the shop for things like that.
So I think you sit between the humanity and the augmentation in the middle somewhere, that kind of, that amazing mix. Another question's come in. As a person who's trying to jump into tech, are there any platforms that I can use to test my tech skills? So have you got any kind of go-to?
Well done, yay. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. There are loads. So I know some of the young people that we were talking to, they were talking about, is it Code Wars? There's another one, something Code Ninja, or all of those, but they do katas and they do little tests every day. So I think it should take 5 to 10 minutes to do. Those are things to do. I would say if you're just getting started with tech and you just want to code, make a project. No one has to see it, but just make something, because if you do want to advance and if you don't have that background, projects are going to have quite a bit of importance, and getting projects done and out and finishing a project so that you can reflect and know how to do it better next time and continue to iterate is so important. And on projects, I would say please get a GitHub account. So that's GITHUB. And that's kind of an online portfolio and a tech portfolio where you can show all the projects that you've made. And so if you have that, an employer can kind of look at the code that you've done, which can be quite scary, but I got an internship from just having an account and having projects on there. So it's really, really important to show off your skills. Like you learn one line of code, put that on GitHub and say, I can do this.
That's about, we can add those suggestions to the post-event blog page as well. So we'll pull all those together for everyone watching. How have you seen the tech industry change during COVID?
Ooh.
Another question.
Oh, tech industry, I would say probably not so much. I think this is the first time that some of them may not be growing, so they're just not used to not having money all the time, which is interesting. But I have seen this huge shift for people to want to learn to code, and I think things like being on furlough or just not having very much to do during the day and not having much of a social life has kind of facilitated all of that, which is great. So I think everyone wants to learn to code. People are talking about Python and JavaScript and stuff all the time, which is really interesting. And it's going to be very interesting to see how much of that follows into employment or schemes or boot camps in the next year or so.
It's really interesting space, isn't it? Who or what are your tech inspirations? So that could be people or it could be companies that you've looked up to or you've been inspired by.
Oh, so huge inspiration is Anne-Marie Imafidon. I think I'm pronouncing her surname correctly. Who is amazing. She's just like a trailblazer in everything she does. She did maths and computer science as well. She is the CEO and co-founder of STEMettes, which is again another organization to get girls into STEM. And just, you know, seeing what she's been able to do for so many young girls is super inspirational. So that's kind of in my line of work. But also she's like the youngest person to have taken IT A-level or something. So super inspiring. As for companies, I don't want to look back at this like a couple of years down the line and say, well, that was a bad decision. So I'm not going to commit to any of
course.
Of
that. Yeah. That's okay. That's all right. Just more questions coming in. One is asking, being self-employed or having a company, how do you keep motivated?
Impact. I'm an impact-driven person. I'm not necessarily all about turnover and profit and stuff, but having someone say, wow, I've really accelerated my learning, or this has helped me tremendously, or I didn't believe that I could do this, or, you know, I've got so much more confidence now, are things that drive me all the time. Or even having young people say, I want to study computer science at university, because it's not easy, you know, doing that by yourself, but knowing that my passion has taken me this far, because it's not like huge expertise, it's just lived experience. That's what keeps me going, and just thinking about, okay, what can we do next? How much more impact can we have? That's what keeps me going.
That's really cool. And also because you do lots of public speaking, you do lots of workshops, how do you hold your nerve? How do you hold your confidence levels, meeting big companies or big bosses? Have you got any tips to share?
When it comes to tech, people are generally quite nice, and I think tech is known already to be kind of relaxed, and people don't wear suits to work and things like that. And so people are generally quite nice, so I don't need to hold a nerve. But I also know that the work I do is important and it's very specific, and so that they wouldn't have found me or wanted to have a meeting with me if I didn't have anything to bring. And that's for anything in life. If someone has asked you to do something, you are qualified in it. Even if you don't think so, you can do whatever someone's, you know, asked you to do.
Very good. Are you very organized as well with your sort of processes, like your Excel sheets and all those kind of things? Do you maintain a tidy workspace, I guess, or also part of being on it all the time?
Am I organized? I think maybe I'm generally like my baseline of being organized might be slightly higher, but I wouldn't call myself the super organized person. I'm trying actually to move into that, but I'm also working on automating a lot of processes. So the advantage I have as someone that can code is that I can get computers to do quite a few things for me with a little bit of thought. And so automating processes and carving out time is something that I'm definitely working on right now. And I have to say it's super hard when you're at home and your room or your office is all you're ever going to see for who knows how long. It's really hard to even just readjust to all of that.
Yeah, I think everything's moving into the cloud or into the OneDrive slowly but surely. Two more questions, just aware of time. What's been the most challenging and rewarding project you've worked on? So I think maybe what's the most rewarding project? That's quite nice.
Rewarding projects. Probably last year's summer program, because watching them present and talk about what they did and have all these people like, look at these little kids talking about code, it's so cute. Like that was very rewarding, definitely at the end, but it was also quite challenging to just get them going and get them to see the value, because I think they saw everything right at the end and they saw what they could do right at the end, which was amazing. But getting them to that stage also took a little bit of effort.
It's almost like working with kids and animals. They say that's the hardest things to do, don't they, in Hollywood?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Managing people. What about your own career in the coming years? Do you have sort of obviously lots of ambitions, but is there anything coming up or anything in the long run that you're thinking about developing into?
Yeah, I definitely want to continue like the studying. I just want to learn more about machine learning and different things like that. So seeing if I can make an impact and use my experience to better systems like that.
Mm-hmm. Would that be a sort of research doctorates or that kind of academic stuff?
Yeah, academic stuff for sure.
Academic areas.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There's lots of questions. I just want to make sure we get all the questions that people have been asking. To finish off, thinking about personal safety and personal like digital safeguarding, because obviously people are working online and in these digi rooms. Any sort of top tips that people can look out for themselves and sort of just be aware as they're launching their careers, and maybe that can maybe do IP stuff or any kind of license.
When you say digital safeguarding, do you mean of themselves?
I guess it would be of themselves or of their kind of either they're meeting with different companies or they're launching their own ideas on a website or something. Is there any kind of
tips? Let me think. I think if you're what I've heard a lot is don't be too protective of your pitch, because it's probably not as original as you think, and share it with as many people as you can. That's something that I've heard. When it comes to launching things, I don't know, Unfortunately, I'm stumped for the last question. But I would definitely...
I think that's don't be too protective of your pitch. I think that is the sort of tagline of this whole hour. That's absolutely brilliant advice.
Okay.
Don't hold stuff too tightly and keep it sort of organic and free. That's what the industry is doing. Brilliant. That was great.
Yay.
We came to the end of our hour. That went quite quick. Did you have fun?
I had fun. It was great answering questions. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming to see my face. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was really brilliant. Like I took so many notes. I'll have a bit more digestion time. Maybe pick your brain outside of the Zoom. But just to thank everyone for coming today, and thank you to Tolúlọpẹ for joining us. It was fantastic, and to Eleanor as well, who was our producer behind the scenes. The programme is coming back in a few weeks, so keep an eye on the webpage for all updates, etc. Okay, take care. Bye, Tolúlọpẹ. Bye, guys.